Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Can you see me?
You,
Hi,
Paul.
Paul. Yes, I can see your lovely face.
Awesome.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Jeff.
Good to see you, Paul.
We've got everybody kind of coming in right now. So we have a couple more minutes.
Can you hear me okay, Christina?
Yes. I just accidentally, I had one of my screens had the live stream on there, so I could like make sure it was working, and somehow I accidentally hit next or something, and it's now displaying a lovely fireplace. It's very relaxing. That's not what I want to see.
See, that's what city government's all about. It's just a lovely little fireplace, and it's all calm and cool.
Yes, on my computer.
Mayor, this is Dennis Hellman. Hello.
Wonderful. We see you, Dennis.
Well, nice to see you. Jim Slough just called me and said he wanted me to beg forgiveness for him because he said he's out showing a house, so he's going to be a little bit late.
You're running a little behind. That happens.
I don't know what the penalty is for that, but he wanted you to know.
Okay, I'll come up with something, I'm sure.
Gotta be
Please.
serious.
Yeah. He deserves a penalty.
Well, you know, on that note, if he's not here, we can't hear his phone going off.
That's true.
That's true.
Or fussing about how he can't get in.
Always something with him.
Yeah, it is. I gotta back up here.
Another Zoom meeting. All right. I'm gonna turn the TV up.
I have to admit, I sometimes really enjoy being the host on these meetings and having the ability to mute people. Yes, don't upset me. I'll mute you.
Can we install that for council meetings?
You know, I don't know if that one's in the budget.
I just want to be able to mute Slough on occasion.
We give him so much grief. It's great.
Too bad he's not here. It's even better.
Are these budget hearings recorded? Well, good. He can go in and take a look at it then.
Yep, it's currently being just about live streamed on YouTube. So there's a little bit of a delay, but live on our YouTube page, and then will be available on there for future viewing.
Mayor, we don't have a summary sheet for the courts, do we?
Not that I'm aware of.
I didn't think so. Okay.
We do have one for HRPC that Alicia will graciously share with us when we get there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Who just joined via phone? 7187. Matt, did you just join via phone? Or Dave Beach, perhaps?
Yes, I'm here.
All right,
This is Dave.
perfect. I think I have you on phone, so I just want to merge you. So I,
Okay. This is Dave Beach from wastewater.
yes. Yes, I recognize your voice. I guess granted, maybe I changed your name earlier when the video popped in, but so that might be Dave Beach. I may have just merged the beaches. Do we have Dave Beach from Municipal Court on the line? Okay, no, I think it's just you. So all set, wonderful. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you, Dave, for now. And we'll get started here
Okay.
shortly. I do not see anybody else in the waiting room. It is 5:30, so we will give it a couple minutes, see if Matt Cordonier joins us, and then we will get started. Alicia, have you heard from Matt Cordonier at all, other than earlier this afternoon? Just want to make sure he doesn't text you and say he's having an issue, because I don't see anybody in the waiting room at the moment.
Yeah, no, he stopped by just a bit ago to provide me with his summary, but I can run down the hall and check on him.
Thank you.
Is Dave Beach from the court available?
Not that I have seen yet.
Okay.
Just checking my email real quick to see if anybody emailed me, but it doesn't appear so.
Christina, you may see another app, one in there from me. I've been trying to get on through my computer as opposed to my.
Sounds good. I did just let you in on another account.
Showing up on here. All right.
I guess one of the things we could do while we're waiting a couple minutes, does anyone have any questions? Again, looking at what we started with last night in terms of an overall summary. And, you know, I'm not planning on getting those spreadsheets back out again unless we need to, but, you know, essentially we feel pretty comfortable with the range that we're going to be living in. Somewhere, again, between that projected $9.1 million and given how things shake out with revenue and carry forward somewhere around 13 million. So I know that's a wide range, but again, just kind of wanted to reiterate that our comfort level and, you know, the budget process, again, to sort of Jeff's question last night, which I thought was a good one. Any questions overall in that regard? Anybody thought up last night? Today?
Paul, I thought it was a good summary that you gave. Given the fact that we've got a pretty wide range between what Andrew's given us and what Jim is estimating, I think we have to obviously watch that a little bit closer when we come to appropriations. My guess is that we may want to look at, and this is something we'll discuss obviously in Q1, but doing our appropriations on a quarterly basis, much like we did this year for capital. And just to keep that a little bit more under wraps than what we have done in years past, given the fact that the income could be, you know, let's face it, could be erratic. So that would be my thought, but no, I appreciated the update last night. I think it looks good, something we can certainly live within. You guys are probably going to have to tighten your belts from your budget, much like what we've done this year. So that's almost like starting right out of the gate, cutting back a little bit, but that's your department, Mayor.
I agree. I think, you know, that's exactly what we did last year because going into the budget meeting last year, we had some news about, you know, how much lower the anticipated income tax was. So even prior to the passage of the budget, our department heads were pretty well informed with regard to what the estimates were, what they looked like, and what we were going to have to do. We'll approach it very similar. I'm not sure what the impact is with regard to quarterly examination of the capital plan. We can chit chat about that, but I think, you know, we have been very diligent about building up this cash balance well in excess of reserves for times like this. And, you know, if everything comes in worst case scenario this year, like is presented in the budget book, notwithstanding anything crazy like COVID, I mean, nobody saw that coming, but, you know, next year we're going to be back up that 10%. So I feel like it's from a capital perspective, something that we need to continue investment in, but that's just my take on it sitting here. That consistency and reinvestment from a capital perspective seems pretty important to me and to attracting business.
I would totally agree, Paul. And that actually reminded me of one question I forgot to ask last night. I think I know what the answer is, but in years past, we have always infused additional capital into the capital appropriations. Did we put any additional capital in this year in 2020 above and beyond the given appropriation?
In a way, and I'll look at the numbers. I think it was like $320,000. And I can share that real quick if I'm not getting.
One of the things that you talked about in years past was, even though we were only doing 20%, we're actually equaling something closer to 24, 25%.
Correct. It was around 22 this year. Let me take a quick look here.
Okay.
On the capital funding sheet, can you see my screen? I should have asked.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For some reason it's not clicking over to me. There we go. Okay, so in the past, we've handled a couple of different ways. This down here shows what we term as the effective allocation rate. This year, we appropriated $378,000 to projects, but that did not go through the capital fund. That was straight through to the general fund. Apologize for my voice. But we still think that it's important for everyone to understand that we did go above and beyond the allocation, and have done so pretty much every year with the exception of 18 and 14. And if you take a look at those years, those were years in which we did not hit expected revenue numbers. So as I look at what we do from a capital perspective, I always look at it like doing so with known dollars. Kind of use that term a lot. Rather than modifying our initial allocation at 20%, let's see if we can stay consistent with that, see how things look throughout the year, see where we actually end up with our cash balance at the end of the year. Just like this year, we're looking at a fairly significant range relative to overall collections. You know, if we end up in the best case scenario and council feels like, hey, that's plenty of money in there, we have some things that we could get done next year with regard to some large capital items that we know we're going to buy, let's move some money in at the end of the year to flush up the cash balance going into capital for the next year. I think that end of year decision, or, you know, should something happen where revenues are looking pretty good and we get presented with an opportunity like this planer where we can save, you know, 10 to 12% on the purchase of equipment, we can always allocate cash that way. But whether it goes through the capital fund and is reported as a capital expenditure or goes through the general fund doesn't really make much difference to me. What continues to be important, I think, is the focus on what that effective rate is and being able to tell the residents of the community that, hey, this is something that we're focused on. We're positioned well because we don't have to make knee-jerk reactions at budget time regarding our allocation. We can stick with the plan.
That sounds good, Paul. I appreciate that explanation. So we're about 22% last year, which is great. You know, we need to continue to replace our infrastructure. You know, even though we have disagreements on how the auditors look at our infrastructure, they say we're falling behind. We think we're not, but regardless, we need to do the best we can to keep those percentages up.
Yeah, we just maintain ours better so it has a longer useful life. Well, one other item I wanted to mention, you know, just we'll try to get you guys additional firm numbers, but something we're going to try to report a little more frequently is the funds that were appropriated and that we are, you know, coming in under budget on different projects. I know I just approved a number of refunds today, probably a couple $100,000 that's going to be going back from some of these projects. So that's another thing we want to start being able to provide a little more frequently to you all, because again, our folks do a great job of managing budgets and coming in under budget on projects, and those funds go back in and are able to be utilized elsewhere. So I do believe that we have Matt Credonier on the line. So we will go ahead, unless anybody has anything else, get started on tonight's agenda. Anybody have anything? Anybody having technical issues at the moment? Looks like I can still see everybody and hear folks. So, all right, well, Matt, I will go ahead and turn it over to you. And we have the Hancock Regional Planning Commission 2020 summary up on the screen. So Matt, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you very much. So our request for this year is $138,500. We received $136,500 last year. Regional planning's budget is 1/3 of it's paid by the city, 1/3 of it's paid by the county, and then 1/3 of it is paid through the administration of different grants and outside projects. I just have a quick summary of kind of HRPC's 2020. We administer the Findlay Planning Commission on behalf of the city. And there's a list of the 22 site plans, 6 alley vacations, et cetera. We also administer the Downtown Design Review Board, which we issued 26 permits for that this year. The revolving loan fund was probably one of the busiest years that we've had. And some of that was COVID related, but we did 8 catalyst loans of $10,000, 4 micro enterprise loans of $35,000, 2 traditional loans for $230,000 for a total of $515,000 in small business loans and grants. And currently the city balance is approximately $296,000. We administer the community reinvestment area applications on behalf of the city, and we approved 11 of those last year. Moving on to grants. Grant dollars awarded through grants that we've applied for from 2010 to 2020, both city and county, that totals just over $14 million. Current active grants that we have going on is the CDBG allocation. That's the sewer televising, that's in concert with the city engineer. CDBG targets of opportunity applications being turned in, and that's on behalf of 50 North and the Family Resource Center through the city of Findlay. We have the Hancock County CARES grant program that we administered on behalf of the county, and we gave out 32 grants to small businesses. Emergency shelter gap funding, that was with Hope House. The CHIP program, which is Community Housing Improvement. US EPA targeted brownfield, Habitat for Humanity. Housing study via the Community Foundation grant. FMA 2018 and HMGP 4424, both of which are flood prone property acquisition grants. So those are all grants that we've been working on in 2020. So kind of the major projects we finished in 2020 was the Findlay zoning map update, the Findlay Hancock County housing study, and we added a new type of revolving loan fund, working with the city and economic development and the state, which is a catalyst loan for COVID. There's lots of other smaller projects, but those are some of the major ones. And looking forward to 2021, looking to update the City of Findlay land use plan. We have an ongoing zoning code update, which we're working with an outside consultant, trying to shape up some of the potential legal loopholes that might be in the code. And then lastly, this isn't directly city related, but we're also working with a consultant developing a village and township zoning code template, which HRPC will then work with the villages and townships to help implement. So those 3 items are our big projects for 2021. Are there any questions?
Go for it, Councilman Wiltshire.
But
Matt, the RLF, at one point in time, you mentioned that when that fund gets low, we get a reinfusion from the state. Is that correct?
If we have a project, we can, if we run out of funds, we can apply for revolving loan funds through the state, which then would be paid back into our fund. So they will give you more money when you have a project.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Schindeldecker, I'm not sure if you wanted to speak. I saw you unmuted for a moment. I muted you because of some background noises. So if you would like to say something, please feel free to unmute yourself again. I'll buy you a minute in case you want to unmute. I just want to say thanks to Matt and his team for adjusting and working with a number of projects. And I know Matt and I had a number of conversations where we were trying to figure out how could we get revolving loan fund dollars out? How could we get hold of some other grant funds? Get a little creative, and Matt did a lot of research in reaching out to the state to check if any of our harebrained ideas would work. So certainly appreciate his help and all of the work from their team on the zoning map update. They took all of the phone calls. I think, man, was it 200, Matt?
No, it was
calls.
over 600 phone calls.
Never mind, 600 phone calls. That was 200 in the first 2 days.
Yeah.
I appreciate you all managing that and answering folks' question and helping facilitate that, because I know it went a long way in helping explain that process. So thank you. And Councilman Schindeldecker, I see you're unmuted again. Would you like to say something?
No, I've had obviously some disagreements over zoning, but the Planning Commission does an outstanding job overall. And as I said, my differences had to do with wording more than it did not have to do with the wording of it, but they do an outstanding job. And I commend Matt and his group for all the work they do.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Council.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much. And I enjoy working with you all.
Hey, Matt, this is Paul. How many people actually ended up opting out? Do you recall round numbers?
We had 177 people opt out for 255 properties. We changed 6,800. We changed the zoning on 6,800 properties.
Wow. Okay.
So a very small percentage opted out. And I've had conversations with Eric where they have many people they have people that as soon as it takes effect on the 18th, it will be a great benefit to them.
Sure. All right. I just, I know we were looking at that tally early on. I just was curious how it finished up. Looks like, 1 point some percent opted out. That's pretty good.
Sounds good. Any other questions for Matt? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate all the work that your team does. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening, though you're welcome to stick around and listen to the excitement that follows.
I think I will check out, but you guys have a great evening.
Sounds good. All right, well, I do not see anyone from the courts on at this point. So I will pause for just a moment in case I have somebody mislabeled. Is there anyone from municipal court on the line at this point? Okay.
Hey,
Well, then we
Mayor,
will- Yes.
this is Dennis, if I can, for just a minute while you're waiting. Do we have sheets in our books on these departments tonight?
We do for both of the water pollution control and water department, as well as the administration. So you should just have those three. We do not have one for HRPC or the courts.
That's what I was looking for. All right. No, I've got the three in the back here. All right.
Yeah, and I don't know if I don't think I've seen any for obviously the council or the ones there at the end with the treasurer's office and auditor's office, but I'm not sure if they have something they plan to share.
All right. And we didn't have anything from Matt Cordanier.
Except for what's being displayed right now, but correct,
Yeah.
not in the book.
I
Yeah.
just thought I was in the wrong church here. Thank you.
Nope, you're all good. All right, well, we will go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Dennis, if you think that those sheets are beneficial, we could distribute them to the other departments and they could use them as a template. We've created those just for the departments that are under administrative purview.
Well,
think
Paul,
that's
for
a
me
good-
personally, I find them helpful. I don't know how difficult or how much time it takes to get them filled out, but the ones we saw last night, I thought were beneficial. That's all.
Okay. All right,
Thanks.
we'll make a note of that going forward. We're taking notes about the process as we do every year, so we'll make a note of that. I think Dave Beach from Sewer Maintenance is on, so we can maybe catch him, Mayor, and I'll walk down to the court and see if I can find Mr. Beach.
Sounds good. Yep, we will move on to water pollution control and Superintendent Dave Beach. Dave, I will kind of go through the quick summary at the top and then kick it over to you. Since everybody knows how to read, I try not to reiterate the obvious, but just want to hit a couple of highlights that you see in front of you. Obviously, the total budget, we added that line item this year to kind of summarize what we have above, just an increase of about $21,000, 50.55% overall. The main changes that you see between personnel and water pollution control and sewer maintenance, that was actually kind of someone was mislabeled in previous years. And so that change is just kind of getting that accurate. No major changes except for the wage increase. Again, that's a contractual item across all of our employees based off of our revenue growth over a 3-year average. Happy to dig into that as if people have additional questions, but that provides a lot of transparency for our employees. And so we're excited to be able to continue to provide that. No major staffing changes, continuing to keep operations tight overall. And so I will hand it over to Dave to talk a little bit about some of the 2020 highlights and objectives for 2021. Dave? We cannot hear you if you are unmuted at this point. I will try to unmute you.
Can you?
Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening. As far as capital improvement highlights, the big projects there was the UV replacement and the pump station telemetry system upgrade. We did replace the storm vector. As far as achievements, CSO long-term control plan and SSO elimination study was completed. We had some pumps out at Bright Road that we had to rebuild. As far as objectives for 2021, we're looking at rehabbing clarifier number 3, 4, and 5. We rehabbed 1 and 2 back in 19. We do have some oxidation ditch concrete repair we need to get done. The other objectives are the annual sewer manhole lining program and the annual sewer televising. And one of the big projects that I'd like to discuss with you guys is our CSO long-term control plan. If I could, I'd like to give those who are not familiar with the city's long-term control plan a kind of a brief history of our long-term control plan, if that would be okay.
Go for it, Dave.
Okay. So basically, back in 1998, the Ohio EPA required the city submit a combined sewer overflow for a long-term control plan. The goal of the recommended plan was to reduce CSOs to no more than 4 overflow events per year per CSO. They also listed recommended improvements to the city sewer system to meet this goal. Since submitting the plan, the city has completed all these improvements. That takes us to 2013. In 2013, the city's MPDS discharge permit required the cities to submit a post-construction compliance monitoring plan. This plan required the city to monitor CSO activations at 5 of the most active CSOs and to evaluate the effectiveness of the constructed projects. So in January of 2018, the city submitted these findings from the PCMP to the EPA. The evaluation report determined that certain CSO locations are not meeting the goals of the long-term control plan, which was to reduce overflow occurrences to no more than 4 times per year per CSO. Findings also discovered that 12 of the CSOs are classified as permitted locations while there was no upstream tributary, while the upstream tributary sewers were all sanitary. They were not combined systems. After discussion with the Ohio EPA, it was recommended to reclassify these 12 locations as sanitary sewer overflows, which according to our permit are prohibited. So that takes us up to now. In August of 2018, the city renewed its MPDS discharge permit. The renewed permit required that the city submit an addendum to its CSO long-term control plan because there were our identified CSO locations that did not meet the goals of the long-term control plan. The city then submitted an updated CSO long-term control plan for the Ohio EPA, for Ohio EPA's approval in January of 2020, to propose additional projects to further reduce or eliminate CSO overflows from the collection system, and to evaluate the feasibility of eliminating sanitary sewer overflows. As of now, currently we're in discussion with the Ohio EPA on the updated plan. So that's kind of where we're at now. Some of the projects that we're going to be looking forward to over the next several years are probably I&I reduction studies, upsizing some sewers, possibly constructing some pump station, and constructing maybe an EQ basin. So that's kind of a brief history on our long-term control plan.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that quick overview. Certainly it's good because one of the things we take for granted is that our sewer systems and our sanitation all work, and you guys do a lot of work to make sure that that works properly and that we're in constant compliance. One thing I want to mention, because I've received a couple of questions on it, though not many at all, is the wastewater treatment testing that we are doing related to COVID. That is being done on the sewage that is going out, coming into our system. Our team is taking those samples and then sending them down to a lab, which is then monitoring that and giving us the reports, as well as putting it as part of the Ohio Department of Health dashboard to kind of monitor that. So it is on the sewage. It is not in any drinking water. I had a couple folks call concerned that the drinking water was not safe. So I just want to clarify, it is testing the wastewater, sewage, not in the drinking water, in case any of you get questions about that. Does anybody have any questions on the water pollution control budget for this year? Councilman Wobser, you have something?
Dave, real quick, what's CSO stand for?
A combined sewer overflow. I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's
combined sewer
okay.
overflow.
Okay, that makes everything else that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm good.
Anything else?
Mayor, I think it might be a valid follow-up point to say, unless I missed it, the testing that's going on at the wastewater treatment plant is not specific to any particular residence. It's specific to the entire sample, so that we can compare concentrations of the overall sample.
Perfect. Yes, thank you for restating that. That is something we want to clarify. I at first was hesitant to even do the testing because I didn't want folks to feel like their privacy was being invaded. But this is, sewage wide for the city. It is not specific to anybody. So, all right. Well, I do see.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Keith on with the COVID testing. Dave, are you guys doing testing? You're doing it on the influent. Are you also doing it on what's going out of the plant? Is there any removal throughout the system, or is it just for influent only?
Just influent only.
Okay. Thank you.
Like I say, we test twice a week, Mondays, Thursdays. Like the mayor said, them samples are sent to an independent lab. The results are sent to Ohio State and Ohio Department of Health, and they're posted on our the dashboard.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, perfect. Well, I do see that we have the municipal court, the judges, and Dave Beach. I apologize, gentlemen, that you got in the wrong room somehow. We didn't mean to put, the court in the corner. Don't hold it against me. But appreciate you guys joining us this evening. And the floor is yours when you're ready.
Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to review what's happened in municipal court and discuss our budget needs for 2021. As with everywhere, there's been impact with the COVID, and that impacted part of what we have done. We've been able to deal with that, I think, most successfully as all other aspects of government. As you may recall, last year we added a probation officer to focus on pretrial release, bond monitoring, evictions. We did that. The benefit of that was significantly enhanced as we had to deal with COVID situations, because we saw increases in things like our GPS monitoring and our alcohol monitoring. We did, as a result of COVID, specifically purchased additional GPS monitors. So the court now owns 39 of those. We are looking for one that was cut off after the battery died. That allows us to have several of those in always, so that there's some ready and have available if there's units that are out for repair. We also have 38 alcohol monitors. At any given day, we have 20 to 22 GPS monitors in place, 13 to 17 alcohol monitors. That has also helped with our jail situation to reduce the numbers of folks there in light of the COVID situation that we're all experiencing. We also were able to implement several other things that had been in the hopper. The security camera upgrades that the municipal court helped to share the expense of, at least relating to the second floor, the security desk. That, along with the new panic alarm system, that's all in place after several years of putting that into work. So we're glad to have that done. We've moved to scanning documents directly as they're processed with scanners on each of the clerk's desks. That's been part of our electronic filing aspect, so we're glad to move that forward in that regard. The city IT department was really instrumental and helpful with us in developing a system for law enforcement to submit electronic search warrants for OVI offenses. So we can get those served quickly, regardless of whether the court's in session during the day or we're home at night or wherever on a weekend. The officers are able to submit those to Judge Hackenberg and myself for review and approval. So that has expedited the work and the timing for the law enforcement. Prior to the recent surge in COVID that we've seen in the last few weeks, we did have a jury trial. We were very pleased that that went well. The health department was very helpful in reviewing our plans, offering some suggestions to do that safely. The jurors all felt as though they were able to deliberate and hear the case and not worry about their well-being. And that was in large part to other aspects of government in this building. We utilized council chambers for jury selection so we could spread people out, still utilize the recording equipment, the monitoring equipment to create a record of the trial. We utilized the third floor conference room for other staff needs because we could space people out there. And we utilized the courtroom itself as the jury deliberation room. So that went very well. We were pleased to be able to do that. We have a trial scheduled for next week that, in light of the current numbers with COVID, just doesn't seem prudent to do for a misdemeanor trial. So we are going to continue that trial, but we appreciate, Mayor, your assistance, your staff's assistance in making those things come about. Recently, we signed an agreement with the Ohio Attorney General for collection of outstanding fines, court costs, moving away from capital recovery, which had been implemented by the court. That does a couple things. Capital recovery added an automatic 1/3 increase to whatever amounts were outstanding. That created a burden and a hardship on defendants and the public that we were working with. The Attorney General does not have that high of an expense to do. The other thing that the Attorney General does is whenever we have defendants say, I'm going to pay you as soon as we get my tax returns, the Attorney General will already have taken their state tax returns to cover any outstanding fines for the court in that regard. So that's a different avenue that we have been able to implement. Not surprisingly, with COVID, as with so many different things, our caseload has been down significantly. Our traffic enforcement criminal side of the caseload is down about 30%. The civil caseload is down about 17%. It was down much more significantly when things opened back up. The civil case numbers increased again, but overall it's down about 17% compared to where we were last year at this time. The only thing that are up are the number of weddings that we're doing. I don't know if you're seeing that increase as well, Mayor, but folks that can't have weddings in large settings, they're turning to us to help them. We've had folks who wanted to get married for insurance reasons, things of that nature. And some of our colleagues in different counties, other courts are not performing weddings. You may have seen where Judge Hackenberg and I have been doing those outside in good weather to accommodate the needs and provide that service to the citizens here in Hancock County and Findlay specifically. OVI enforcement for the city, law enforcement has also increased. While we're not seeing as much with the other areas, we are seeing that increase in the alcohol-related driving offenses. When we read and see things in the paper, we understand that with the situation, people staying at home, that the number of mental health cases, the number of alcohol-related cases, and those kind of things are definitely on an increase throughout certainly the latter half of this year. That's a quick summary, a recap of things that we have done in the past. We do appreciate the council acting as the fiscal agent for the court. Even though we are not a specific department for the city, we're grateful to have the assistance and the expertise of folks like Don Essex, the auditor's office, things of those natures. So we do appreciate that. Realizing the overall economic situation is not as sound as what it may have been a year ago. Our 21 budget request we held at the same level as our 20 budget allocation, so that we did not have any increases there. We do have some options. We're looking at if the numbers go back to where we would expect the normals to be, that we may look to hire a full-time magistrate rather than the multiple part-time magistrates. We would also expect to see some continued reduced spending on other line items, our special projects and other items that are not subject to council appropriation. In 2021, we'll continue to dispense justice dealing with the COVID situation, doing so as efficiently and safely as we can. We've done more things by remote as everyone else is doing in terms of pretrial conferences, those types of things in both civil and criminal cases. The law director's office has also moved to more pretrial conferences by way of telephone. We have the capability to do more video things where that need arises. We will also move into the second phase of our text notification to remind folks of court hearings, looking at some things to remind jurors of their jury service dates and when they need to report for that, and taking some of the other hearings online in that regard. The other thing we're going to do is continue to move forward with the electronic filing of documents. We've got that in place. Part of our delay there has been our case management vendors, working with them so that we can have things filed electronically right into the case management system. So we're kind of at their mercy, although we're told that will be part of the objective for early half of 2021. So that's just a quick down and dirty of Findlay Municipal Court. We'll be happy to answer any questions that the folks may have.
Are there any questions for the judges or Mr. Beach? Oh, Councilman Wobser.
Gentlemen, thank you for the update again. Always appreciate that. We don't get to see you guys very much, which on a personal level is a good thing. But looking at the gray book, all of your separate accounts here generally have significant increases versus last year. Of course, that's based on the amended amounts versus based on your revised budget or in actual 2020. So are you gearing up your budget wise that you think next year is going to be a full boat exactly like it was in 2019? Or are you cutting back a little bit based on what we're seeing this year and thinking that's going to continue on into next year?
I think we're thinking that's going to continue on into next year. Certainly, we don't expect that we're going to see a dramatic increase on January 1st of caseload numbers. Mr. Beek, you want to elaborate on any of that with the special projects and things?
Yes, sir. What we've done is if you compare our 2020 allocated budget to our 2021 request, it's slightly less. Even though we included partially in that budget the full-time magistrate, we stand ready as we did in 2009 in the event the economy goes south and things get more difficult than they are now, to shift more of the burden back to our special funds, which we just in the 2020 budget got back from 2009. And what that does is that removes the financial burden part of it from the tax dollars to our court special funds, which are funded through court costs.
Very good. Thank you.
I would like to just quickly thank the courts. I know they did a lot early on, just kind of meeting with us and being very considerate of the fact that we have all of our different employees in the building and being considerate of how their operations impacted that traffic and working to communicate consistently with us to manage through that. So certainly appreciate that and all of the great work that you all do. And we're happy to let you guys use our various space. It's the city's space. Is there any questions from other council members? All right. Well, unless you all have something to add, I think you're off the hook.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Have a good holiday, Christmas.
Yeah. Have a good evening. Merry Christmas to you as well. All right. So moving on from municipal court, we'll go back into the water department and Superintendent Jason Phillips. So I will get this shared up on the screen. Thank you, Alicia. So quickly touching on the water department, obviously the summary, as you can see, it's a decrease of about 6.5%, about $477,000 from the 2020 original request compared to this year's budget. I'll let Jason kind of touch on that, but some of the highlights, continuing to look at security of some of the departments, a couple of minor changes that we're going to be looking at specifically for the utility billing office and access and egress and egress points, as well as looking at managing the continued water quality, continuing to evaluate what may be beneficial there to control algae, and then certainly the wage increase again across all of our departments. So I will hand it over to Jason. We cannot hear you if you are talking at this point. Looks like you are still muted. I'll give you a minute and then I will unmute you. Don't say anything mean. All right, Jason, I clicked ask to unmute, but it still says you're muted. So we'll give you a second and then we'll move on and we can come back to you if needed. Oh, you're here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Every time you said that, I want to say good, like the old Verizon commercials.
So the biggest drop that we saw in the budget is we're getting a better handle on the spent lime and the cleaning out at the lagoons. We saw after we got rid of the large stockpile, this year we rebid it out, and for the 2021 budget, we're going to have probably about $100,000 less of expenses out there. So that was a significant drop to the budget moving forward. as well as just tightening down on our summer help a little bit out at the reservoir, and focusing back on like the corrosion study with Arcadis, still making sure that we don't have to begin to feed an additional chemical because there's really no need at this point in time. Our water quality is stable and very high, and so we just continue to study and make sure that we continue on that path. And then looking forward, you know, I've got just about every roof fixed and replaced here at the treatment plant, and we're just making sure that we keep the focus where we need to, and the expenditures where we need to spend them.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. Was there any questions from council? Yep, Councilman Wobser.
Jason, thank you for that overview. Looking at the decreases in your budget this year, about not quite half of that is coming from personnel services. So I'm going to guess that's salaries, but you've got personnel services declining in all 4 categories. What can we attribute that to?
Most of that was we had summer help laid out in all of the branches. And so moving forward for 2021, we're going to look at we're going to see about the internship program. That internship program had a little bit smaller price tag than just flat out summer help. And so as of right now, we're just going to kind of focus on that and see. We also were looking at, in 2020, we were going to add some additional personnel and made the decision at this juncture in time not to. And so we're just kind of holding our own to kind of make sure everything balances out before we add anything additional.
And one thing I do want to mention there, you know, in 2020, we had budgeted, we were hoping to get some kind of backup operators for the plants, which is always a good idea because we don't have too many of them to start with. As we went through the COVID pandemic, there was certainly concern that, and continues to be, which is why we're stressing the importance of social distancing and proper hygiene with all of our team members. One of the things that the state, and I'm not even sure if they did it federally as well, is that previous operators could be utilized in an emergency situation if we had a group of folks get ill. So that's something that obviously helped us be able to say, okay, we can hold off on hiring anybody in that position at this time and still be covered in an emergency. But something that, as we look at what the recovery looks like and revenues, something that will probably be back in front of you to make sure that we continue to have good coverage of those plans, backups, and making sure that we have appropriate personnel. Other questions?
Mayor, I don't have a question, but I think it's noteworthy anyway to sort of reiterate, and I just real quickly snipped out of can you let me share my screen? Just so those that are attending from the public can have a good understanding of what we kind of already knew here in the city, but was validated by the state auditor's performance audit. You know, compared to the peers, this water department is significantly outperforming our peers, both in terms of water quality and the amount that is produced and the fees associated with it. So we've had a lot of discussions about, you know, we're going with the meter project and making sure that we have the ability to notify residents, for example, if there's a leak in their system. I know that is repeatedly one of the most popular things that our residents articulate to our department when they have something that is unbeknownst to them and they're going to be charged for it, that we're very proactive in that regard. So I want to, commend Jason and the department for that operation. Again, when we look at the numbers all the time, it's pretty clear to us that the department's run pretty well, but to have it validated by the state is a whole nother thing. And Jason, I think the last time I did the math, residents in this town were able to get super clean water through good distribution networks at adequate pressure for like less than $1 a day. That's still correct?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So kudos to you and your department. Well done, and I'm sure we'll continue to do a good job there.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That is great to remind everybody, and they do fantastic work. And I know I appreciated it when they notified me a number of months ago that I had a leak. They said, no, something's not right with you. Check all your toilets, do all this stuff. Well, something's not right with me. We all know that. But my water, and they said, check everything. And I went through and I couldn't find anything. And they came back. I said, I had extra company here. That was probably that. And they came back and they said, no, you still have irregular use, you have a leak somewhere. And a couple of days later, I'm kind of checking, and suddenly I heard a leak through my vent. And I found that they identified a leak underneath my house. It was just a pipe had rusted through and had separated, and it wasn't anything crazy. But I had to have somebody come in. It could have caused mold and moisture issues underneath my house. It could have caused a number of problems, and they were persistent. Those Fenimores kept telling me, there's an issue. You better get it taken care of. But that's important. And that's even with my broken water meter and transmitter. So it's them coming out and checking it would have saved me even more money if I had that updated transmitter that they could have told me every day what the issue was. But appreciate your department's work, Jason, and maintaining our infrastructure, looking for opportunities to continue to improve the work that you do every day certainly does not go unnoticed. So really appreciate that. Is there any other questions or comments from the group? All right, anything else from you, Jason?
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's see, water treatment. So I think we're moving into administration. Really, again, not a significant change here. We have a slight decrease, even with the wage increase. Additionally, we do have a little bit of funds in there. You can see under the service safety personnel, we have built in for a overlap period when we hire a service safety director individual, and keeping Paul on during that transition period, we could have some additional salary expense. But really no major changes there. No major staff changes. What I would like to do is, I know we have Don Essex on, as well as Alicia and Paul and Brian, who have all worked diligently this year under this department. And so Don, I would love to hand it over to you for a moment, just to kind of hit on some of the 2020 achievements and the 2021 objectives. And surviving 2020 doesn't count. That's just implied that all of us have done it, though it does seem like a pretty big achievement some days. But Don, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Our major concern for most of this year in HR and throughout the city is just COVID and our response to COVID and what we do with COVID. So we've started to do a lot of things that we haven't done before, safety-wise, just making sure that everyone is as safe as possible. It's become sort of an everyday thing. Now I'm doing contact tracing because the health department is so very busy just dealing with the whole county. So a lot of organizations have taken that on. So It's just something that's being tracked every day. I try to keep the mayor and Paul and Brian and all of the administration informed of what's going on, and also just speaking with the employees, knowing what's going on with them. So that's been a major concern this year, and probably the top priority right now, just making sure that people are safe and that we're responding to COVID appropriately and keeping up with all the changes that are taking place with COVID. As you know, we've got a significant refund from the Bureau of Workers' Comp, and that's as a result of their $5 billion dividend. So we should be receiving about 1.3 million here towards the middle of the month, hopefully next week. So that is that's really good news. Otherwise, workers' comp wise, we have had the fewest incidents since I've been here. So this year we've had 6 reportable incidences, and again, a reportable incident is any time an employee has to seek medical care for an injury at work. So we've had 6 this year. When you look at the previous 5 years, we've had an average of about 15. So we're less than half. Of course, COVID has had a lot to do with that, because we aren't out and about as much as we normally are. But meeting with the TPA and the MCO earlier this week, it hasn't been such a significant change in a lot of other organizations. So I like to attribute that to the culture of safety that we have in the city of Findlay. Just focusing on safety, making sure that employees are working in a safe environment. The other thing that I wanted to mention is there'll be a lot of time and energy put in to the recruitment of a service safety director in the coming year. Of course, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to replace Paul, but that's going to be a priority for next year. Just finding the right person and getting as close as we can to filling those shoes, those very big shoes of Mr. Schmelzer. I don't have anything else. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Don? Yeah, Councilman Wobser.
Don, and I don't know if this question is best for you or for the mayor, but with the combining of the safety and the service director positions back together again, what do we have a savings to the city with that move?
There will not be a significant savings, given that there really was not a whole lot of salary change for Mr. Thomas. So really, we're not going to see much of a saving. We'll see some once we see what the individual comes in at on a pay range.
Understood.
With Paul being part-time anyways, there hasn't been significant savings there.
Thank you.
Yep. So a couple other items. Actually, Paul, do you want to touch on anything? Touch on the status of the Strict Center if you'd like. Bueller. Not sure, we might have, oh no, he's here. Okay, well, I'll go on, and Paul, if you want to jump in, feel free to. Couple of other items I want to just kind of follow up on what Don said. Obviously, communication has been challenging, and I want to give Don a shout out. Obviously, as all of the different changes and orders were coming out, trying to communicate within our team what that looked like, how we are considered essential and we have to continue to operate. How do we get safety measures implemented when we're not doing certain things that folks were interested in having us do? Why we weren't spending money on doing that. We increased our cleaning protocols. We worked with the departments to develop their own cleaning plans within the department. In some cases, even moved people into different office spaces and spaced out. But I think the biggest thing is really just answering questions. And now that we are seeing, more cases, none of which are tied back to the City of Findlay work environment, but folks bringing them in from other places, continuing to be careful. Yeah. Paul says he got kicked out of the meeting. That's okay. Okay. So continuing to just manage that has been challenging, but we're continuing to keep folks safe. And when we talk about that contact tracing, that's contact tracing within the departments or within the City of Findlay. Again, luckily, many of our folks they're doing all the protocols, they're following what we're telling them they need to do, so we don't have a lot of folks that are exposed to one another. I won't spend much time on it. The census is over. We did a good job. We're all glad it's over, and we'll see the numbers in early 2021. It seems like forever ago, but we did receive the top micropolitan for the 6th year in a row. So folks are continuing to invest here. Hired a new income tax administrator, Corey, which we're excited to bring on. So things are going well. Next year, not a whole lot of crazy items that we can say are going to be super exciting, but wanting to continue to work on strategic planning. How does that involve the entire community? I know there are a number of other organizations that are wanting to do something similar. So how do we combine those efforts? Again, hiring a service safety director individual. Oh, I guess I have to let Paul back in. And then again, continuing to just manage operations, perform at the level everybody expects, regardless of what's going on in the world around us. And that's what we do every day. Paul, I don't know if you are back on, if you want to touch quickly about the Strict Center.
Sure. I did get kicked out when Don was talking about Bureau of Workmen's Comp and the culture of safety, and certainly appreciate his efforts in helping us build that culture as well. As far as the Strict Center goes, we still plan on trying to get funding done and get the planning completed for that. We do have a lot of work ahead of us to get that done. So the sooner we can get the allocation or the contribution, the allocation made, the better. But I do think from what I've heard in the community, also, just talking in general to other safety agencies, emergency responders, there is definitely 110% consensus around the idea that that's going to be a great regional facility. So behind schedule due to COVID, but still looking forward to getting that project done.
Yeah, and there has been a little bit of noise at the Capitol to see if we're going to have a capital budget. So should know in the next week or two if anything is moving forward there. And we had originally submitted a request for funding through that. So once we kind of know where that lies, then we'll decide kind of next steps. Councilman Hellman, I see you unmuted. Did you have a question?
I do. While Paul is still on the line, I'd like his opinion, I guess, on combining those two positions, the safety director and the service director. Is that a wise move in from your perspective, from an efficiency standpoint, and just from handling the responsibilities?
Pretty much every decision my boss makes is wise, Dennis.
Oh man, you're good.
No, it's been done before. It's been combined and effectively executed. So I don't see any issues with it in either way. It's always up to the individuals and how the teams work together. So historically, it's been managed in different ways, and I don't have any real reservations about it going back.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I just wanted your opinion. You've done a nice job in that in the past, so I figured you were somebody that knows. Thanks.
Paul's so wise. That's a good answer. All right. I know we do have obviously internal control service. Goodness, I can't talk. Internal service central stores. Goodness gracious. Any questions? Unless folks have any detailed questions on those, we really will can move on to council and general expense and the auditor's department.
Yeah, I think that's just where everything gets purchased through for a lot of our contracts for office equipment. Budget's pretty much staying the same as last year for central stores. So there was a decrease in spend this year, but we're back to normal budget process for that. I don't know. Ginger sometimes jumps in on this to provide a little bit more detail. I'm not sure if you want to do that or if anybody has any questions, but essentially status quo there.
I did see Ginger. Oh, yep. I think Ginger unmuted. So Ginger, anything you want to add there?
I don't have anything to add unless somebody has a question.
All right. Well, with that, then we will go ahead and hand it over to you or whoever is going to lead the discussion for council on down.
I'm taking it. Okay. The first item up is your council budget, which is the first page of your expenditure budgets. Council is made up obviously of your salaries as well as half of Denise's salary as you share her with the law director's budget. The rest of the budget for the most part is having to deal with her legal ads in the Courier or postage or anything else that she might have to do. Do you have any specific questions right now for your budget?
I'm checking. I don't see anybody unmuting or raising their hands.
Okay. Then we will go on to the general expense budget, which is on page 18 of your budget book. The general expense budget is the place where items fall that don't specifically belong to any one particular budget or any one particular department. One of your biggest expenses in the general expense budget has to do with the jail. The jail costs for 2020 went way down. I'm assuming it has something to do with COVID. I do not have the crystal ball for what 2021 is going to be. I made the best guess estimate that I could possibly do. It might change. It may not change. The cost per day for the jail has not changed as far as I know at this point, but I think your occupancy at the jail because of COVID has made it drop a little bit. The other expenses that you end up having in general expense deal with the city's share of the combined health district, as well as the street lights, not traffic signals, but street lights, and a few other miscellaneous things such as the share that you have for the watershed group, the $5,000 that helps them out, the stream gauges that help us determine when flood water is coming into Findlay, the raise the bar contribution, the money that you have for the revenue sharing for the 2 townships that we still have revenue sharing with, as well as your subsidies. You will be subsidizing the pool for 2021 at this point for $117,520. You're also going to be having to go back to subsidizing the airport for $150,000. You are not going to be having to subsidize parking or SCMR at this point in time. SCMR is your streets. Does anybody have any other questions right now about anything on general expense?
Ginger, what is the change in the pool from last year, our subsidy?
It depends upon how much money you guys make an appropriation for the pool for their actual expenses. It all depends upon how much of that expense they actually use. So whether or not they were planning on either using more of their 2020 budget or they need more repairs for 2021, I can't tell you the exact without having to go back through it again. But I don't think that their budget is changing an awful lot. I think it just depends on how much they're using each year.
Okay, thank you. I had one other question on the council numbers. I just finally found them in the book. Of course, it was the first daggone page. I should have known. Council in our budget, we've got Medicare, medical insurance, et cetera. Is that because of our portion of admins or something like that? It's not council.
That's half of Denise,
Okay.
first of all. And Some council members have opted not to be in PERS, which that's the case, you have a higher Medicare than you would for PERS too. But the biggest share of your salary in your council budget has to do with half of Denise.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, you ready to move on to the next one? Your next one is your self-insurance budget, which is on page 130. It's a very small 3-line budget. Self-insurance has to deal with paying for the premiums for our liability policies throughout the city that are not specific to like the airport. It also has to do with the claims for someone hits a pothole, needs their car realigned, and they have a police report filed or whatever else. We have claims that go through there. It also pays for an annual evaluation of our insurance policies as well. They refer to it as an insurance audit. That's the biggest thing for your self-insurance. These are things that are there. Your self-insurance fund is to help pay for these things, as well as anything that might come through that doesn't fall under an insurance claim or insurance policy. Any questions on that? Any questions on that? I know.
I want to add something to that.
Okay, hold on.
For the
Hey, folks. For the benefit of our newer council members, the self-insurance fund was formed several years ago in a bad liability insurance market, and it's been estimated that that saved us in excess of $5 million, potentially even more, since that evaluation was done a few years ago, in terms of the resource it's provided us and the ability to strengthen our position when we go to market. Right now, the liability market's a pretty good one. We're able to get insurance. We talk about that amongst the administration from down the hall and ourselves, and work through an audit once a year that you have available to you in summary form through Kathy and through what we do. But the purpose is to make sure not only is everything insured properly, but does your insurance actually provide the coverage that it says it does? And the experts that look at that for us do a super job in doing that. The second thing with regard to that, you're looking at ending the year with not much less than $1 million, and I think it's about $970,000 is the projection at this point in time. Generally, we try to keep it around $1 million. And in the past, as with a lot of your other funds, the interest was significant and helped us do that. But the last few years, or the last several years, because the market has been so bad for interest rates, you have moved some money over there, here and there, to keep that at about $1 million. But a very valuable fund that you have there, and I wanted to take that extra moment. So thank you.
Okay. Your next one is the treasurer's budget. And that is on page 7. That pays for the city treasurer, which is Susan Height. Her budget is not very big. It basically pays for her salary and her related items to her salary as well. Her other costs in there have to do with some professional development costs, and her biggest cost is the computer services chargeback that we've got. Any questions regarding that? Okay, next one is the auditor's budget. Our budget for the most part hasn't changed. I will tell you that COVID has made a considerable change in how our office has handled a lot of things. We are probably busier than I think I've ever seen our office in 25 years. We have not only taken care of the gigantic amounts of money coming from the CARES Act, there's also been an Airport CARES Act grant that I've been taking care of, as well as a DOJ grant. We've been trying to do cross-training in our office. We've been trying to figure out ways to make sure that if one of us gets sick, it hopefully doesn't take out our entire office. It's very difficult this time of year between budgets, year end, and trying to prepare for auditors coming in. We've also had the challenge of trying to figure out how to fill one of the full-time positions because we evidently I'm now competing with Marathon trying to get an accountant in our office. The past several interns that I've had that we've been able to offer the job to have been stolen away from us by Marathon. So it's posing quite the challenge for me to make sure that there is somebody in here else that can start learning the ropes so that we can continue to keep going on. We have a retirement probably coming up in our office here, probably within the next 2 years, which is not me. And then I will probably end up being the next one, which will be a little while yet. But knowing the fact that I started learning with Janet Wobser for at least 12 years before she retired, I'm really behind the 8 ball because at this point in time I've learned and had so many more things added to my plate. So I'm a little concerned about succession planning, but I've got to be able to be more competitive with Marathon. At this point, do you really have any questions about our budget, or Jim, do you want to say anything?
No, I think it's important that I add, and most of you know how hard the staff in this office works and the challenge. The other thing is, and Ginger touched on it, we've really had to work hard to make sure we stagger our staff in such a way, heaven forbid that we would end up with everybody sick and not be able to make payroll. And that's been a very big concern for us. And also make sure we're paying the bills and doing the things that need done to keep the mayor's departments and the courts working the way they need to work. So yeah, everybody, we've got some huge challenges in your safety departments and your service departments. And we see it even in this smaller office here. So that's been big. And it's been good working with the administration as well. The mayor had asked us to step up and help with a few things this year, as Ginger touched on with the grants and whatnot. And that's fit very well into our office in terms of functionality and what we're able to do. It has, as Ginger said, made her incredibly busy and the balance of the staff. So we've got a lot going on. And Councilman Hellman, I wanted to say, in terms of our summary, single page summary, it is that entire book that you have in front of you. So I hope you enjoy that summary and get the time to make sure you see all of it.
I would like to just real quick thank the auditor's office and certainly Ginger, because it has been a lot of work to manage the CARES dollars and figure out all of the how we make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and that certainly hasn't gone unnoticed. And I appreciate all of her help in managing that. So thank you for all of that work.
Mayor, I'd like to echo those comments. I was actually called into Ginger's office and saw the boxes and boxes of paper that she has produced to keep us in compliance, hopefully with an audit down the road with all the CARES Act money. I am sure there are days when she says this money was not worth it, at least to her, but it was certainly worth it to us, and we appreciate all the work that she and her group did to keep us in compliance.
All right, we still have one more thing to go through.
I'm still watching to make sure we don't have anybody raising their hands virtually or anything. So you're good. I'll interrupt if needed.
Okay. In your book, under the section that is labeled financial summaries, you want to go to the very last page. And that last page looks like this. Rather than making you flip all the way through the book and all the various pages, anything else that hasn't been touched on by a department is basically on this page. It is all the debt services, the pension funds, and any other kind of miscellaneous fund. The sheet is getting starting to shrink quite a bit because of paying off pieces and parts of debt. When I first put this together, it almost flowed over to a second page. Now we're down to probably just a little over a third of a page, or a little bit over half. So these are all the numbers presented to you for your 2021 information. You can always look at your individual stuff on there. The one thing that I will make sure that I try to make sure you all know every year is when you get down to the bottom of the list where it talks about special assessments. You've heard a couple things mentioned about when we're demolishing buildings, we're going to recoup all that money via special assessments. The one thing that council needs to remember is just because something is assessed to a property tax or a real estate tax does not necessarily mean the city is going to get that money. The reason why I say that is anytime we have had any kind of special assessment, and it could be something that we've done as a project as far as installing sidewalks. It could be things going on out in Hunters Creek for the drainage project. It could be for the weeds or demolition. People don't always pay their real estate taxes. And sometimes they pay enough of the real estate tax for the base real estate tax to get paid, not necessarily the special assessments first. When you have properties then that have had huge amounts of special assessments for weeds, demolition, or whatever else it might be that someone else has assessed to it, and the property ends up going up for a sheriff's sale, sometimes there are agreements made in order, because the special assessments end up basically being higher than the value of the property. There are agreements made sometimes to reduce the special assessments or forego those. So just kind of keep that in mind to a certain extent, that just because it's a special assessment on a real estate tax does not necessarily mean we are going to recoup all that money. Does anybody have any questions regarding this, the debt services or the special assessments on this page?
Ginger, is that something, the special assessment that you were just discussing, is that something at some point we need to write off some of that debt as uncollectible, or is that even possible?
It's not something that we necessarily need to write off. Usually if a property changes hands, not necessarily through a sheriff's sale, some of that stuff will get paid off by the new user, the new buyer. The biggest concern ends up being when you end up having something go to sheriff's sale, and depending upon how many special assessments are out there, because we've got a few properties that have lots and lots and lots and lots of weed assessments. That's where it hurts.
Slide in.
Okay.
Yeah, the main reason for discussing this here at this time is so that you are aware as council members that we don't always recoup that money. It's commonly said, well, we'll assess it and it'll be fine or whatever. And it's just the reality of the marketplace, or the reality of the ability to get a property moved by the county treasurer at a sheriff's sale puts the government entity in a situation where somebody's got to give. And the value, typically the value of putting that property back into the marketplace, back into a productive use, outweighs the loss, but the loss is borne by your particular funds. So just so you're aware of that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. While we're on the subject of these funds, one of the ones that is in there is your severance payout reserve. And prior to the budget, this book, by the way, it's a 10-year anniversary of this book, just so you know. Isn't that exciting? And the prior to putting this one together, had a conversation with Councilman Wobser, as he mentioned last night, to insert a line item for the potential for you folks to authorize us to go ahead and slide over, as part of a piece of legislation, $1.6 million into your severance payout reserve fund for obligations for potential retirements. And I don't like just throwing numbers without giving you a graph or a picture, but this is one of the cases where I need to do that because of the situation we're in here. I've got really, right now, currently, we're going to next week at your meeting request an appropriation to cover the retirements we have now that we funded and need to fund. That's going to take your million down to $600,000. So you'll have a $600,000 severance payout reserve. Next year through 2021, your obligations through that budget year, should all that come to fruition, which isn't likely, but should it all happen, will take you down to almost $900,000 in the hole. So your obligations outstanding outweigh where you're at through 2021 by an amount of $900,000. I did not include 2022 when I talked with Councilman Wobser per se, but there's another about 270,000. So your outstanding obligations would be about $1,150,000 by the end of this 2-year budget cycle. So it's a significant amount of money. So the question I have here as we move forward for next week, if it is this council's desire to take some of the cash that you have while we're in a strong cash position and set it aside to fund these obligations that you certainly do have. I would not recommend that you fund the full amount, but it certainly makes a lot of sense to move as much as $1.6 million over and bank that money to get you through next year, so that if things go really south, you're in a position where you're not worried about that one coming back and biting you as employees turn over because of the economic conditions or because it's needed or there would be a change, and heaven forbid that would happen. That being said, too, in terms of your revenue projections, I've tried to be as realistic. When I look at the revenue projections, I don't want to be optimistic. I don't want to be pessimistic. I look at the data I have today, the conditions of the market, and where we're at, the local employment conditions, where we're at with COVID and what we know. There's some good historic data to look at with regard to where we were at coming out of the last recession. So based on that, I'm very comfortable with the number you have being a solid number. It would take, in my opinion, some major negatives over the next month or two to take us into a far worse scenario. And again, heaven forbid that happen, but we'll, like we did in 2012, the idea in 2011, when we were in these situations and it was so bad, keep you folks up to date monthly, even bi-weekly, and with Councilman Wiltshire on appropriations as often as necessary. And I'm always grateful because he takes my calls when I have to talk to him about money. So any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ginger or Jim?
I guess I'd like to get some feedback if we can today for what you folks would like to do with that severance payout.
Yes, Jim, I have always been an advocate to keep that fund, that reserve up to date as far as we can. You just don't know when the economy might switch and may pull some people to do some things differently on their timeline. And we pull that money down faster, and we don't want to have that unfunded. That's always been my take on it. And so that's why in my conversation with Jim, I've asked that he move forward with that. So I know Paul tends to not object, but has a different opinion on it. But that's where I come down on it.
Councilman Russell?
Yeah, without having more information and seeing the net effect on the full budget, I'd be hesitant to make such a commitment when we're getting the information in a conversation in this manner without really any time to study it. So I differ from Jeff's approach on this. I think this would be something to would be appropriate to look at in the new year, but I don't believe it is something that I would want to commit to at this point in time. And if given the opportunity to vote on it, I would vote no.
I would like to share, I guess, as follow-up comments to that statement, the transmittal letter, the very first page in your budget book does give you the net impact on your budget. If you look at my transmittal and the comparison that Mr. Smelser did, the very first page of the book, or the very first page, I think it's the third page in, second page of my letter, it says that I'm anticipating, starting with initial cash, based on my calculations, of $2.8 million, $12.8 million. So it's 12,757 there under 2021. We're expecting the departments to return 2.7 million back based on what's been disclosed to us through this process. If you reduce that amount by 1.6 million in the transfer into the severance fund and add in what is my revenue projection, which is the lower of the two projections between the tax administrator and myself, plus including all the other budget revenues that you get, that's another 24/7, and take out the expenses, the net carry forward in that situation is into next year is $9.1 million, which is in excess significantly by over $2 million of even a best practice 3-month reserve as recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association. So I did provide that so that all the members of council knows, and that there is literally from this aspect, unless you folks have another use for that cash, there's no downside to this that I can see as your finance officer. And again, those retirement obligations are obligations. You know, that ultimately the exact dollar amount, you know, down to the penny, we never exactly know because they continue to work, they continue to accrue. And those numbers I quoted go up every time the wages go up. So the initial numbers that were presented to you in your council meeting are now going to go up by 1.31% based on the salaries that are done and implemented for your next budget year. So that's where that's at, and it keeps you solid, it keeps you strong. And I want to assure you that, and I would not make that recommendation, and I would not have made that recommendation without providing this data to you as part of this budget.
Any other comments from
real quick on that topic, just to share my opinion again, similar to what I did last time we made an appropriation, and that is that we can always take a look at an average and make an appropriation to keep the fund at an appropriate level, funding all the outstanding liabilities for what we think might happen, again, is not using no dollars. I do think that Jim is correct when he says that we're not going to, you know, sacrifice any stability with regard to the transfer. But I also tend to agree with Grant that we can take a bigger picture look. In fact, I thought that's what we were going to do coming out of our last meeting about average years and making an annual appropriation as opposed to waiting a couple years or 2 or 3 years and then making a large lump sum contribution, because we may not always be in this position.
Thanks, Paul. I was going to say a kind of similar comment. I know we touched on this at the pre-budget hearing and one of our prior council meetings. I would be inclined to, I think, get caught up on this year, but I would probably be a little more comfortable with doing it similar to what we stated about appropriations, maybe make a couple payments over the next 6 months or a couple appropriations towards it, but certainly up to council. We have the funds, but as we kind of continue to see where things go, I think it would be wise to also have that kind of in a less restrictive account, recognizing that we do have those commitments. So other questions or comments on those items?
On the general expense item, I think it might be worthwhile talking real quick about the jail.
Hey, Paul, I'm going to cut you off for just a moment. I believe Councilman Schindeldecker was trying to say something.
Fair enough, thanks.
Yep, Councilman Schindeldecker, are you there?
Yes, I would agree with Grant. I think we know it's coming, but it is to some extent a moving target. I would be hesitant to dump the whole amount in there at one shot. I would tend to agree with Councilman Russell.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I don't see anybody. Paul, go ahead, because I think you're going to hit on one of the items I was going to hit on. So I'll hand that off to you.
I was just going to talk about the jail. It's in that general expense, and Ginger properly alluded to what that budget looked like. I think even though the court has, done like all of our other departments and continued to do business, which I commend, making those operational changes, I think that their expectation is that business will pretty much return to normal. And as such, some of the programs that have been put in place relative to COVID and management of the jail are going to go back to normal. And that's why you see that increase again in that jail budget. With regard to just a real quick update on the overall jail conversation, and this might be stealing your thunder, Mayor, but the conversations that we've had with the commissioners that are incoming are that that project still needs to be examined. There was a study that was prepared. I'm not sure if you've all seen that or not. Comparison of different alternatives and associated estimated costs. Certainly something that is going to remain on our radar in 2021 and could have an impact if we increase sentencing capabilities, could have an increase on that or an impact on that budget as well.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions or comments on that? I think that was more of just a kind of FYI there. I think just kind of two final items, or I guess three. I know a couple of the items that were touched on. Certainly just want to reiterate again, as we talk about the assessments on the properties, understand that those are not necessarily assured recoups, but certainly help keep our neighborhoods clean, help neighborhoods continue to hold their value by getting rid of those dilapidated properties. And when I really should have gotten those pictures for you all, because these are properties that really, really needed taken care of. So we'll send those to you. Continue to work on that. Auditor, I was just going to say, it sounds like you guys may need to dedicate and plant some trees around town. If you've been giving us this big old book for 10 years, that's a lot of paper. And then the final item, obviously flood mitigation continues to be a priority. That's something that's continuing to be advocated for with Senator McCauley and Representative Cross. And we will see where that continues to go. But that is an item, though it's not ever really represented in our budget, is something that I just want to continue to mention that is still a major focus of mine, and I know of the communities as a whole. With that, I think we have gone through all of the documents and the agenda. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns? I want to give a shout out. I see Councilman Hellman's unmuting. Go ahead, Councilman.
Yeah, well, I was just curious how we're going to resolve or conclude the discussion on the severance thing, the severance issue that the auditor brought up, and I know Jeff's got his hand up there, so maybe he's got an answer for us. But there's been some discussion with no resolution.
Jim, you're going to have legislation for us next Tuesday, correct?
That's correct. The annual cleanup legislation.
Okay. So we'll have a chance. My thought, Dennis, was we will have a chance to discuss this further, specifically at the Tuesday meeting. If we want to discuss it more, we can, but that was kind of my thought. Grant, are you okay with that?
All right.
That's easy enough to amend on the fly.
Right. And then you're right. Once we read it, if we want to amend, Dennis, we can make an amendment then and go forward.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Any other items for the group? I feel like I had one, now I don't remember, so it must have not been too exciting. Yeah, Auditor.
I also, the mayor does a good job complimenting your staff and whatnot, but it needs to be said, your entire group of employees that had a hand in putting this information together for you, they work really hard. It starts, as you know, with the pre-budget meeting, and the very next morning they have they get together and they begin talking about their individual budgets, and they don't stop. Even after you're done here today, they'll go back and they'll look at things. So they've done a super job, and I think it's a compliment to them that we've been so blessed to be in the position that we're in, I think, more than anything. So I just wanted to share that.
Definitely. And yes, certainly last but not least, I want to thank Alicia Mitchell for helping put together all these budget summary documents, for being that person that I harass frequently to pull different information and reports together and helping show all of the budget summaries today. She's a jack of all trades and really helps our team out with a variety of different things. So I want to give a shout out to Alicia and definitely the whole City of Findlay team, and for you all taking the time to go through this, being willing to serve your community on City Council. It's a wonderful community to be a part of and to be able to help lead. So I appreciate working and enjoy working with all of you. I did want to comment real quick, just because I know for those viewing online, you're only seeing those who are sharing their lovely faces with you, but do want to mention that we do have a number of other council members on this meeting. Currently, we have Council President Harrington, you see Councilman Hellman, Palmer, Greeno, Russell. We have Councilman Schindeldecker, Councilman Slough, you see Councilman Wobser, the Deputy Auditor, the Auditor, Don Essex, Alicia Mitchell, Engineer Thomas, and Safety Director Schmelzer. And I believe Jason Phillips may be still lingering or forgot to hang up his phone. I'm not quite sure, but appreciate everybody's time this evening, and would love feedback on how this all worked. It seems like it went pretty well. Praise Praise be to the Lord, because you never really know. But appreciate it. And I hope with that, I will go ahead and close the meeting. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.